which is when it started, and been with it ever since. So the project, the protocol itself is a decentralized derivatives trading and liquidity protocol. So in some ways similar to Cadence, because we also have a perps piece, but the potential difference is that we focus a lot more on real world assets in the form of derivatives. So being able to buy different fiats or different equities and stocks around the world, making it possible to basically buy anything that has a Oracle data feed in the real world is what our protocol allows you to do. So if you are someone who does not have access to, let's say, US stocks, for example, or China stocks or European stocks, as long as there's a trusted price feed that we can find, we can make it available to for someone to buy in crypto.
Nice, man, nice. And the data between real world assets and the blockchain is exactly the missing piece, you know, and I'm sure you already know, you're already aware of this. So I'm excited to get into that. Thanks for that intro. Nice to meet you, Stanton.
Likewise.
Nice. And so I'll just get right into the questions for these guys. The questions are open. Anybody, you know, that wants to jump up here, either jump up here or raise your hand, whatever you want to do. It doesn't really matter. And so let's just start at the base of asset tokenization and how it really works, you know, because there's so many different facets to this space. And so my question to you is, how would you explain asset tokenization to someone that's unfamiliar to the concept? And what are the key benefits, you know, as something very simple that somebody is not familiar with this kind of thing?
I think I can jump in here to give a little beginning to it. I'm gonna try the explain like I'm five method, and then I'm gonna leave the other guys to give a more technical deep dive into it. Asset tokenization, if I were to explain it to a random person, is like taking something that in a lot of cases might be very, very expensive or clunky or difficult for them as an individual to get involved with or to own, and making it a lot easier to do that. So for example, real estate. Everyone knows it costs quite a bit of money to buy real estate, whether it's commercial or residential. To invest, you need quite a bit of capital to start. And in today's day and age, most people don't have a few $100,000 laying around liquid to get involved with real estate, but everybody wants to get involved. So how does asset tokenization help real estate? Well, hey, take something that might be, you know, $10 million for this big commercial development that it would be great to get involved with. It might be in your neighborhood, but you can't right now. Tokenizing that and fractionalizing it, making this one big thing, one big $10 million investment into, say, 10 million pieces where you can get involved for $1, it's suddenly now accessible to you and other people in your community and really anybody in the world, because it's not geographically locked. So that's one example I would give to people that opens up their eyes to what is this asset tokenization thing. It's a technical process, yes, but really all you need to know is now you can have access to things that you didn't have access to before.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in and give some examples like where we see it currently. But yeah, it was a great example. That was a great explanation, Osis. So yeah, currently in the DeFi landscape, we see a lot of tokenization, especially around treasury bonds. That's where we see like a lot of like PMF so far. And that brings essentially stable yield on chain, which is really important for the bear market and, you know, future bear market cycles. So cryptos can just completely, you know, crash in these bear market cycles because there's finally stable yield. And some more interesting use cases, like I was just saying, like real estate, you know, bringing watches on chain. I've seen that being a big use case. Cool. And you can essentially take loans on your watches and these different systems. But yeah, a big part of asset tokenization is just bringing maturity to the DeFi space as well. And, you know, potentially unlocking like trillions of dollars of liquidity from the real world onto on-chain, essentially.
I'm going to come in with a more dictionary definition. Asset tokenization is, at the simplest, it's just putting something on the blockchain. So people, we were mentioning watches or real estate or whatever. As long as you put the asset and record it in some way on the blockchain, that's considered asset tokenization. I think one thing that we're all talking about though is decentralized tokenization. So putting it on a public or decentralized blockchain, because it's also completely possible to put this in a centralized blockchain in some server somewhere. But the main benefits of leveraging blockchain for this is the immutability. So especially if it's a decentralized blockchain, once you put it onto the record, you can't really change it. And also the transparency, depending on how the blockchain access is set up. So being able to make sure that you don't double count, making sure that people are not faking their information, that's going to be really big. And that's why there's a lot of interest in this area where currently financial systems, a lot of it is very black box in the sense that you can't really see what's going on, and it's centralized in the sense that there are a couple companies who have full control over what's going on behind the scenes. With decentralized blockchain, that makes it significantly harder to fake data and to manipulate data afterwards.
Sure, and really it relies on the data source, where this stuff comes from, and it's one of the questions that I'm excited to get into is the fact that we have to mainstream that information from the real world asset to the blockchain and update it consistently, so we don't get left behind or, from one handshake to the next. But I'm not sure, one of you said something about the trillions of dollars that will be unlocked whenever as we, tokenize all these assets. So my next question is, what role does asset tokenization play in improving access to illiquid assets? Because there's so many, and how does this influence, the distribution of wealth?
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in here. So we are building a cross-chain based lending protocol because, like I said earlier, we want to bring institutional products and RWA on-chain. And the reason is because it will bring so much liquidity to Web3. And this is a use case for blockchain technology, right? To bring traditional finance on-chain. And this is what we're doing through our different tokenization partners who will tokenize these assets for us. And when you think about the potential use case with partners who can tokenize tangible assets like real estate or properties, if this large real estate can be tokenized, it then makes these markets very liquid, which are typically not liquid, right? They are illiquid because these markets cannot be easily or quickly traded for its fair market value. But now that they are brought on-chain, this will unlock trillions of dollars, even though, statistically, real-world assets represent what is $7.5 billion market, which might seem marginal when it compared to the trillions of dollars of worth of assets being managed in traditional finance. But nevertheless, we cannot deny the pace of growth and the increasing range at which assets are being tokenized, whether it is treasuries or commodities or private equity, private credit, whatever. And all of this just indicates trends, indicates volume, and indicates activity. And of course, I don't know if anyone has mentioned it because I was rugging earlier, but there is data that shows that by 2030, real-world assets markets could be valued at $16 trillion. And I believe it could even be higher if we unlock the potential of RWA, especially what is stuck in non-liquid assets at the moment. So non-liquid assets have been there for a very long time. However, it's a problem for investors. And then they have kind of found ways to get used to it and adopt to it now. But if you change that and you provide these investors with immediate liquidity source, then it will change everything. So that is why we're very hyped about this. We're excited about building here. And we hope that we can see more people building and allowing users to have various pools to be able to lend and borrow against real-world assets. So that is my take on that.
Very interesting, and absolutely true. What I wanted to add here is a perspective on what bringing something on chain exactly means, or what it exactly looks like. Because I believe it was Horizon earlier mentioned that the textbook definition would be it's basically putting anything on the blockchain. But what does that mean for people? I'll give an example, a real world example of what happened here in Canada over the last couple decades. When the real estate market specifically, I know I'm coming back here. It's something that everybody can relate with and has experienced personally. When real estate was opened up in Canada specifically, where I'm from, a lot of investors from Asia came over and started to spend money in Canada. Whatever they had going on in their home countries was for whatever reason not worth their money or investment at the time. They saw Canada and properties here in Vancouver and in Toronto area as somewhere that they wanted to park millions and millions and millions of dollars. And once that globalization effect came into play, the entire housing market in Canada, and actually I believe Australia is another great example of this, has gone through the roof. It was a bubble. It was like, forget crashing, we're just going to keep pumping up. And now the housing market looks like a meme coin to some people, because they're like, how did this little 800 square foot property end up being $1 million in this neighborhood? And it's because of the liquidity that has entered the market from it becoming global. Now, the same effect happens with assets being tokenized and being brought on chain. What might be one person's garbage could be another person's treasure, and suddenly these things are now able to be invested into by people everywhere, anywhere, with, of course, some regulation, but the potential that comes from being globally accessible is huge. And that's one example of how more liquidity could enter a market or enter a certain asset class.
Yeah, I think that really like hits the nail on the head there. We're essentially bringing these assets on chain unlocks just like liquidity to these assets and brings transparency and huge customer base and all these different things to previously illiquid type assets. And a good example of this is something like pre-IPO stocks or funds. Most companies now are staying private longer than ever. And all the deals for pre-IPO stocks essentially happens behind these back offices with crazy high fees. And you can see this inside funds as well. Not everyone can just invest into a VC fund or be an LP or something like that. And tokenizing these like illiquid type assets, or these hard to come by, or these not globally available assets, I think is where RWAs really shine and tokenization really shines. Bringing these on chain just opens this up to everyone. Everyone's able to start making these like really profitable investment classes. And yeah.
Building on what Vivaldi said, completely agree. That was going to be the similar example I was going to use. The main thing that putting things on chain does is it using smart contracts, you essentially can help deal with the trust piece. So traditionally, in IPOs or in any company that's raising money, there's a cap table. You need to pay a lot of money to build this trust layer to IPO, where you make it publicly available for people to trade. But with smart contracts and allocating these assets on chain, you make it so that the trust layer, which is the smart contract, is already kind of taken care of. And so you don't have to pay someone else, like a bank or another firm, to help you go through the process of settling everything through current government entities, etc. So just it's a more efficient way to do it. And I think governments and other industries are going to start looking at this more and more to optimize their trust layer for a lot of their services.
Interesting. And all the assets, there's just so many assets out there in the real world that are just sitting there that just have so much value, but there's nothing we can do with it. So once they come on chain, all that liquidity, all that money can do so many things for people. Not only, yes, it's gonna be great for the Web3 space, but it's gonna be so beneficial for people. And so what could you guys outline just a few of the major benefits that people would see whenever all that liquidity flows into the Web3 space?
I can bring one topic up around that. I think one of the big gaps here is that, you can tokenize almost anything, but the question is what do people really want to buy in DeFi or crypto overall? And I think the whole space has seen a lot of so far usage for treasury bonds. They're starting to look more into real estate and other more things which are easy to fake, such as watches or purses, these luxury goods. And I think finding that gap between what people want in the space and what people can tokenize is like where it really is. But I think like tokenizing, lots of financial assets, which brings stable yield, something that's really huge in crypto. Everyone just loves stable yield in crypto. So I think bringing corporate bonds, municipal bonds, all these different things on chain will just drive a lot of liquidity, which is usually just like unlocked or completely locked off chain, and bring those on chain, just bring in a huge inflow of capital.
So essentially, just like taking the asset, say for a house, it's like a $500,000 house. You own it. You're like, oh, great. I want to tokenize this, and I want to put it into this specific protocol, and then I earn yield on that money, on that asset that I tokenized. Just for an example.
Yeah, exactly. And then you can start using more crypto native rails on top of this and start doing leverage on it, for example. So something actually interesting which Canto's Finance did was you can loop these treasury bonds and essentially get 20% APY instead of 5% APY. So I think using lots of these different crypto rails to start making these legacy traditional finance systems more effective is where we'll see lots of usage and more TradFi banks and things like that start flowing into crypto because it's just a way more efficient system.
Got you. Interesting. Oh, I thought somebody was going to jump up here. Yeah, and
I would jump in.
Was somebody going to jump up?
Yeah. I wanted to add to that in a few simple words by saying a rising tide lifts all ships. So with more money coming into like every market, more people are going to have opportunities to benefit in every way, shape, and form. More jobs are going to be created for managing these types of things. More potential for a higher return on investment because of the liquidity that's in the space. It's just more of everything. Right now, a lot of liquidity is locked, a lot of value is locked in these illiquid assets, as everyone's mentioned before. And when you unlock that, it's like a big floodgate is coming, and everyone has a ship, whether you're in a canoe or you're in a yacht, it's going to rise your situation. You're going to have a different vantage point.
Yeah, spot on, OSIS. Just to buttress that, the way I see it, for one, there are a good number of people who own types of assets that are very valuable but non-financialized, or could be financialized. For instance, watch collectors, or people who, for example, own a collection of wine or collectibles and stuff like that. And then on the other spectrum, there are people who are maybe interested in financializing these collectibles, but cannot do so because there aren't enough incentives. So to give an example, someone who collects wine, they basically store it for many years until the wine gets to its peak state, and that's when they want to drink it, right? And some people can do that at home because they have larger homes and wine cellars and whatnot. But most people cannot do it. But basically, just to buttress your point, OSIS, it's basically capital that's locked there, and it's capital that's lying there. Now think about it. If you can have your wine aging for what, 15, 20 years, and meanwhile you can use it as collateral, then something like collecting wine would be something I'll be more incentivized to do, right? Because especially in crypto, every time I want to invest in something that is denominated in dollars or euros, I'm kind of missing out on the capital that is allocated to ETH or to other assets. But if I can take a loan against that and invest it in ETH, then my thesis is, okay, the loan is going to pay itself just from the appreciation of the ETH asset. So that is just to buttress your point that once there is an incentive, then absolutely, I'll always want to. I'll be encouraged to do these kind of things. And my point just stands that financialization of real assets is what can really encourage people here.
I'll add one final point, and this is for the Web3 side. I think asset tokenization will legitimize Web3 and crypto more, because if originally when we were doing crypto and it wasn't tied to the real world in the form of USDC or USDT or whatever stablecoin token, we're playing with monopoly money. It was just us trading with ourselves, and if there was no real world connection, there's nothing that's connecting us to the real world. But as we connect to the real world more and more through asset tokenization or anything with real world assets, every part of crypto becomes part of the real world essentially. And so all the liquidity that can come on chain makes it more and more real that crypto is going to be here for the really long term.
Yep. And whenever a homeowner, say you've been a homeowner and you bought a house, and I keep on coming back to this because it's a very simple concept for me to understand. And so a homeowner, they give up their house and they earn 10% yield per year on their home. That's $500,000, and that turns into an income just for owning a home. And not to mention, you're paying off your mortgage, through the yield that you're earning, but also you're earning an income and more income than a lot of people make, just by utilizing the tech behind Web3. And I'm so excited for that to come. And so as this evolves, it's going to be really interesting to see, people, change how they do things, so, but that'll take time, and we're at the beginning of it. And so I'm really excited about it. And so my next question for you guys is, how do smart contracts facilitate the tokenization and like streamlining the process of ownership?
Yeah, I think Stanton touched a bit on this earlier, but I think smart contracts bring the ease of access to everyone with kind of making this whole, I wouldn't say KYC, but this whole trust layer open to everyone. Lots of these things, such as like funds or pre-IPO stocks we brought up earlier, they happen in these like shady environments, or they happen with these really high fees from these like back offices because of trust. And also you have to know someone to kind of get into these different things. So I think putting on smart contracts, making it public on the blockchain, just basically opens this up to so many more users, and in a trustless way, which is more powerful than a trustful way at some level. Yeah, that's what I would say for that.
Sure. And like the Web2 life, all these banks, that have been making just a killing off of the liquidity that they have in their hands, that we're, able to actually start benefiting from. It's just going to be a major shift in how things are done. And I'm sure there will be a way that the banks and the governments will try to monitor it and continue to benefit from it as well. But it's going to be a lot tougher because decentralization is essentially the future, a trustless system.
Right. And for the people who are new and don't know what a smart contract is or what this even means, think of it as like a neutral ground that is what you're getting involved with. It's a place to transact, what your fees are, and you are like an independent party, and whoever you're doing business with, you meet in the middle with this smart contract where the terms are very clear and they cannot be changed without everybody knowing. So there's a certain level of integrity in that because it's public. There's a lot of things that, even a bad actor would not do if they knew everybody was watching them. So that's the beauty of having a smart contract being what facilitates transactions, and it makes everything of what we're talking about, it makes it all possible. Having a technological layer that is more or less independent, whereas when you're working with banks and you're working with these entities, the shady back offices and these middlemen, they all have a very personal vested interest in every transaction, and ultimately they're out for themselves, and you might not know what exactly is going on in their mind. At least with a smart contract, when you're making a transaction, when you're getting involved with somebody or you want to buy something, you know what you're getting before you get into it.
And building off of what OSIS was saying, essentially escrow accounts, you need lawyers to kind of be in the middle playing that role, and lawyers are expensive. Instead of that, you can get a smart contract to do all the work for you, which is significantly less expensive, which is optimizing and streamlining of tasks for transferring ownership and the like. I think the kind of hard part we're going to have to deal with is as we kind of connect the real world via tokenization, there's going to need to be a layer of policing, because with smart contracts, everything is done on chain. Everything, like if it's just financial assets or digital numbers, easy to handle. But when it goes into the real world, a lot of times, let's just say for real estate, how do you guarantee that the transfer of ownership actually happens? Who's policing it? So at the end of the day, this needs to be essentially agreed upon by governments and whatever policing body is there to make sure that this is actually legitimate. And that's going to be the hardest part.
I agree with that. And my personal opinion, AI will be a strong, factor, and I think that a good mediator in between, to automate and to do things, that are right and that are transparent and that are functions that are stationary, that can't be changed. Well, they can't be changed, and I'm sure they will be, but I think AI will be a stronghold in that particular function. So with data, I'm very interested in this particular part of asset tokenization and real world assets. And the middle, the handshake there is the data. And so how do we ensure a seamless integration of data and real world assets?
I can speak to this one first. We use Chainlink as one of our oracles because they're trusted in terms of just legacy, and their format is they get data sources from multiple entities. And we also use Pith, which is another one who's getting data sources from a lot of different entities. And the key, I think, for data is going to be that you're getting this data from a lot of different sources. The more different sources you have, the more likely that you get accurate data. It's the same as having it's the same concept as having decentralized blockchains where you have a lot of validators all over the world. The more validators you have, the less likely it is possible for someone to hack the blockchain. And so for data, it's the same thing. And I think Chainlink and Pith are both doing an excellent job on making creating different opportunities for people to leverage data from the real world.
So I had one question actually around that towards you, Stanton. So with these like price oracles, if you're, let's say, doing a trade with a, let's say S&P 500 stock or something like that, or any stock, let's say like Tesla stock, how do you get the pricing for these after market hours? And how are these like oracle providers doing that? How does it work with your guys' protocol?
Yeah, so for us specifically, we don't do after hours trading. So we just lock it at that time. But some oracles provide the data by having access to certain after hours dark pools. But I don't think it's being used officially right now because it's too random. There's too much noise potentially, and we don't really have access to the trades anyways. So that's the current situation. There's just not enough data sources that's all reporting the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and you had mentioned being able to utilize a decentralized form of data, where maybe a community could be incentivized to provide the correct information for different markets. And however you could maybe monitor, organize that and make sure that it's correct. I'm not sure, but Web3 is all about empowering the Web3 community, with the benefits. And so maybe there's a way that the community could contribute to that data in some decentralized form. I'm just not sure how that would work, but potentially,
At this time, it's still hard. So what Chainlink and Pith does is they actually have to audit all these different data sources to make sure that the data that they provide are going to be accurate. And to kind of de-risk themselves as much as possible, they find as many data sources as possible. most of these are not going to be like individuals. They're all going to be either like entities in Wall Street, organizations that are already collecting this data, or for crypto numbers, it's going to be the large centralized platforms or the decentralized trading hubs.
Yeah, I think I see one of the big ways this really works out in the future, for example, like off hours trading and all these different systems, is to essentially get these, when we bring these assets on chain, say like Tesla stock or Coinbase stock, having like liquidity pools for them where people can swap and trade from. Let's say like a Uniswap liquidity pool. And these would essentially create their own price, which you can use towards like perpetual protocols and things like that for pricing. But that's probably still like a long way in the future.
Yep, you're completely right. That's exactly how it'll work. And the hard part will be whether or not we fall within government legislation, because I think there's a lot of rules around what can be public and what can't be during after hours.
Wow. A lot of challenges, and I'm sure there will be a lot of solutions, and excited to hear or see you guys improve these challenges, you know, that we're coming in contact with. And whenever it comes to transparency and security, you know, Web3 is far superior than our Web2, you know, lifestyle that we have grown accustomed to, you know, since we've been subjected to it for the last, you know, 100 years or whatever, however long we've been a part of it. But for investors, owners, and users, you know, what are some of the key things that we can look forward to in terms of transparency and security whenever we move our assets over to Web3?
I'll say something first. I think it's going to get, so Web3 is not quite, okay, let me take a step back. Web3 is really good for transparency and trust, but from a user perspective, I think it's still very difficult to use for most people, because traditionally how the world worked was you basically assign someone else to help you do the job of security. So banks would do it, or trading firms, etc. Someone else is doing all the trading for you. You don't have to do it yourself, and so you don't handle security by yourself either. With Web3, we're really trying to put power back into every individual's hand, which means that you're supposed to handle your own security as well. So I think right now it's actually, from a user perspective, more difficult and harder for most people to use. But I think over time, what's going to happen is we're going to get the benefits of all the security and the trustlessness of the systems as we build these user interfaces. For example, banks in the future, they might just be an interface for people to use Web3 services, financial services, when all the financial services gradually move online, because it's more efficient and more optimized from like a daily transaction kind of methodology level. But for users, I think it's still very tough to move everything on board at this current time.
Gotcha. And like just like uploading. So if you have any asset that you want to upload to the platform and you want to get that liquidity, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around how that looks and how that flow is for the actual user. And so like any asset that you can think of, you upload the needed documents, or how does it work whenever you do want to provide liquidity with your asset?
So right now in the real world, the way it would work, if you wanted, it would be the same as taking out a second mortgage for your house. So you'd have to go to the bank. They would basically get the deeds to your property, and they have a physical way to take the property away from you. There has to be something like that in place, because when you make this accessible on Web3 or on crypto, you're essentially putting the real asset as collateral there. So if something happens, if something goes wrong with your investment in crypto or wherever, some entity needs to be able to recoup that collateral. So for the real estate example, essentially there needs to be a middleman whose sole job is policing. their role is to make sure that they have the ability to take that collateral and basically pay off all the debtors on the blockchain if needed.
Huh. So really, you would need to have complete ownership, because you had mentioned like the bank has got to issue you the deed, and obviously that document needs to be in a secure place. But you need to own the specific asset in order to provide it to the protocol. You can't like provide it to the protocol and then buy out the bank for the deed, or can you?
I think the way it works is, I'm not sure if you can buy out the deed, but as long as you have the money, you could probably pay it out. Essentially what needs to happen is just there needs to be an entity in the middle who's guaranteeing the real world asset can be liquidated for whatever reason, and that the liquidity will go to whichever party it needs to go to. So for example, there's a lot of borrowing protocols in Web3, and the way it works is you put collateral in there and you can take something out from it, right? So let's say you put Ethereum as collateral, you can borrow USD, and if you can't pay back the USD, they basically liquidate your Ethereum. So it's the same thing, except you're working with a real world asset, and there just needs to be a way for the system to automatically liquidate you if it needs to. So with Ethereum and USDC, all of that is digital. So smart contracts can handle everything. But if it's not just a smart contract, it requires some physical, like if it's a physical thing, then until everything can be moved on chain as a smart contract, you're still having an issue where there needs to be a middleman to guarantee that this will happen.
I see. Gotcha. A lot of different nuances that are still, that still need to be taken care of before we really onboard the next billion users, because everybody keeps on, mentioning, the next billion users are gonna jump on here, or however many users, the next influx. And really the tech, the behind all these awesome benefits needs to be sound and easy to use before that happens. It can't, we're not here, this bull run that we're currently in, so to say, or, that's going to come in the future, it is going to be driven by the usability and the tech more so, opposed to just jumping in and getting, the exits, from your investment, so yes.
Yeah, this is gonna start. We gotta like really take it like baby steps and lay it brick by brick. That's kind of what I feel is our responsibility as early adopters. I find that a lot of us entrepreneurs and founders, we get our head in the clouds and think so far in the future. And then when you ask difficult questions like you just did, where it's like, well, how does that work exactly? It's like, oh, well, we've got a whole lot of little bricks to lay and iron out those pieces. So what we've done on our side at OSIS is we recognize that most people need us to explain like their five and literally everything to help onboard them into the space. About 70% of our users today actually never had a crypto wallet before they learned about OSIS. They've never held Ethereum, they've never held Bitcoin. And so we had a unique experience building up as a project from 2021 where we had to educate a lot of people and get to know their pain points. I personally come from a finance and actually a technical background myself, so it's easy to forget that people actually have no idea what's going on over here. Most people still don't know what and how to use the internet, and we're expecting people in the Web3 space to hurry up, come on and get on in here. But hey, it's what I realize is it's baby steps. A lot of people are older, and so one thing that we've done in the approach that we're taking is really simplifying the necessary tools that people need in Web3, for example, a wallet, making sure that people, even if you forget or lose your seed phrase, that you're not completely locked out. Things like simplifying, hexadecimal hash that is your wallet address to send money to, which is an irreversible mistake if you send to the wrong address and you make a typo. Things like that, simplifying it to like an ENS, an NFT domain built into our wallet. stuff like this, it's all nuance, and it's all things that are like user experience based. I think, I'm not sure if it was Stanton or who said this, but a lot of the next billion users, actually no, it was you, Web3M. You said the next billion users is going to be very like a UX. It's going to be a UX problem more so than like a heavily technical problem of how are we going to make these real world assets proof of reserve, and how are we going to police them. It's going to be more like, okay, how do we make it simple enough so that like your grandma can get on and work the blockchain, and work her cell phone, and buy into something, because hey, it's all the older people in the world that have the capital, that have the liquidity to really pump it into this space and fund us as projects. So yeah, the approach has been education, patience, and building our products in a way. For example, our tokenizer, when I said 60 seconds or less, it really is 60 seconds or less. We made it like the TurboTax experience, where like really anybody could get in here and make sense of creating their own token, even if they might not necessarily know how to use it. Hey, at least they've actually created a smart contract, and that's your start. That's dipping your toes in to finally get on spaces like this and meet other great companies like everyone here, to get to know and get involved. It takes those first few steps, and our responsibility to help educate people and give them that ease of use, focusing more on UX than all this mumbo jumbo tech stuff. We're going to take care of the tech stuff. That's a given.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. I think the biggest gap right now with retail is just like the whole user experience. And I think hopefully this cycle, I think we might see near the end more of a retail like inflush. But yeah, something we're completely focused on with Cadence. Our goal, and the issue is like, it's a very hard technical challenge essentially to make the UX good. I think that's why no one's really cracked it in so long. And, everyone's working on things to like make it easier and better. That's something we're working on Cadence as well, is, we're using different systems, which, let me know if I get too technical, but, account abstraction, there's going to be no wallets when we launch Symphony in Q3. No wallets, no bridging, no gas fees, basically looking like a normal Web2 UI. And obviously that takes like, lots of different systems in the back end to make it work, like intent-centric systems we're using. And I think everyone finally caught up to how UX is a huge issue about like a year ago. We started seeing lots of people come up with different account abstraction ideas and all these different systems. And yeah, I think, in about a year, everyone should be primed for like retail to like inflow, and everyone hopefully will have some like really good user experience UIs. And yeah, I think that's when retail can really come in and start doing different things, especially when it comes to RWA protocols. Those are very like geared towards, most of the time geared towards retail. And I think all these technical developments everyone's been building this last 2 years will really come into play then.
Nice. Yeah, all that stuff, is essential to us growing. And just like Joel said at OSIS, you can't have a user, that doesn't really know how to navigate all the tools to use and to be in Web3. I can't be sending my house to the wrong address, right? That doesn't really work out too well for the user, and the responsibility, for me, I've been in situations where the responsibility on me is a little scary, because I don't know about you guys, but I'll check my address, probably 6 or 10 times, sometimes before I decide to make a transaction. And because the responsibility is completely on us. There's massive repercussions if you're dealing with a large amount of liquidity in any case in Web3. And so whenever that responsibility and, the ease of use is taken from the user, not taken, but, empowered for the user would be a better word, and insured somehow, so that if something does happen, they're completely protected. Because I've lost my phrases probably 1,000 times, and I found them, after looking through all my papers and all this good stuff. But those are the things about this space that are gradually getting better. And I'm excited to see, how they evolve, being a part of this space so early. And so many people say, oh, we're early, we're early, we're early. We really are early because of all these challenges that we're going through. And so for those that are here now, if you're dealing with these challenges, you're in the right place. And so that kind of gets into my next question about what's to come, in 2024, 2025. We're on the brink of something very, very interesting. And so what do you guys see in the next couple of years in this realm of the future of asset tokenization?
So one thing that I do know is that there are a lot of large traditional companies that are actively looking at asset tokenization. The big question for them is why and how they will do it. So why is more from like an organizational perspective, they need to be able to explain to shareholders, to internal management, everybody, why this is relevant for them. It might be the case for actual products that they want to start tracking these things. For supply chain, it might be for sustainability purposes, they want to start tracking carbon for carbon credits. Financial systems, they're looking to make things more transparent, less dark pools, etc. So all of these use cases are there, and the technology in terms of blockchain is it. This is what's going to help with all of those things. The next part is then how they should do it and how do they actively maintain it afterwards. So there's an investment there. And I think what's going to happen in the next couple of years, there's going to be a lot of infrastructure projects. There's just going to be a lot of projects helping to make this transition over easier and smoother and easier to manage in the long term as well.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think there's, I think the interesting part about asset tokenization is that it's really dependent on when the market's like really ready for these things to be tokenized. Something about asset tokenization, RWAs overall, is that it's been a theory since like the beginning of crypto. You can see 2015, people brought up, hey, let's tokenize stocks. 2017, 2018, let's tokenize different real world assets. 2021, same thing. I think it's finally really grabbed attention these last 2 years, partly because of the bear market and also partly because of like regulatory like uncertainty starting to decrease a little bit and making it more open. So I think those are the two drivers, but one of the biggest RWAs, if people really think about it, is actually stablecoins. That's found the most PMF throughout all of crypto, and it's like the proof that RWAs can really survive and tokenize assets really makes sense, because stablecoins overall have opened up, trillions of dollars of capital to these developing countries and these different systems, which really need a more stable assets. And I think 2 years in the future, we'll see maybe a lot of more, like I said, numerous times, probably a lot of stable yield systems coming on chain. Corporate bonds, everyone would love like a chain link bond not chain link bond, like a Coinbase bond on chain. And all these different yield systems, run more by like these different crypto rails, making it more efficient. So we'll see for the next 2 years. I think lots of other systems. Real estate's an interesting one, but the regulatory area is really, really dark over there. And I think we all agree here that maybe not in the next 2 years, but ultimately all these different financial assets will be moved onto crypto rails because it's just way more effective than legacy TradFi systems. It's more about timing when these will happen. I think that's the big question, is like when do people really need funds on chain? Companies like Securitize.io, if you guys have looked into them, they've tokenized $600 million of assets on chain, but no one's buying it. No one's really buying any of these different assets because they just thought everyone would want it, but no one really wants it. Morgan Stanley tokenized, I think, like 500 mil also. No one's buying it because they don't really care about these different assets. So it comes down to timing when these things should be tokenized and why. So yeah, I'll pass to someone else.
I think before we really see a lot of like real world asset adoption, we're gonna see the current space mature significantly. I think that, like, for example, the current meme coin phase, just like the NFT phase, is gonna, it's gonna have its hour and then it's gonna pass, and then we're gonna see a lot more altcoins come into maturity, just like every single cycle, and it'll be a progression. We're gonna need for that progression. It's gonna be the brick by brick thing, and that's calling like all of us in this room right now who are here to, as part of that progression, we're gonna all mature as companies from being startups to being like, strong companies. A few years ago, Polygon was just a random other company in a Twitter space that nobody really knew much about, but now boom, they're a staple and a pillar in the whole EVM space. We're going to see a lot of us mature. I'm really looking forward to that part. We're going to see a lot more like regular Joe adoption, and that's going to be on us to bring them on. Something that we're working on right now is we're actually building a decentralized exchange. And not to go too into like our products, the approach that we're taking to it is building it from a social perspective rather than so much of like a technical or an investor perspective. It's more like, hey, you're going to have all the cool tools that you get on other exchanges like a Uniswap or a QuickSwap or whatever, but we're going to add this social layer to it so that people can actually communicate on all the different projects that are going on. We're going to see a lot of different, I believe, different chains be more interoperable. That's something that I really love what Chainlink is doing on. Less segmentation and more unity. I think we're going to also see a lot of projects die in the next couple of years. And that's every cycle. There's a whole washout of like 99% of the market. All these random projects turn into zombies. The meme coins are going to turn into zombies, and the real ones are going to prevail. Like everybody in this room right now, I am absolutely proud and honored to be here on the stage with y'all. I really appreciate you, Web3M, for putting this together. But I'm here with some real people, and anybody listening to this, check all of us out, because you're looking at some real projects, and these are the ones that are going to stand the test of time. Everybody here is looking into the future and thinking about the end user and the customer, and building this space out into what it's meant to be in the future. So that's my 2 cents here.
Interesting, and you brought up a point about socializing, the atmosphere, and socializing the interactions that for your exchange that you had mentioned. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like Farcaster, that's an awesome initiative to provide an easy way to be a part of this ecosystem that's all on chain. And that does so many different things, but the primary thing that I see it contributing to is the fact that people can just sign up to a social platform and they're on chain already. They provide you with the tokens to transact and to buy NFTs all within the platform. And I think that that infrastructure that makes it so much easier to interact with Web3 is really what's going to power, people, or make people want to be a part of it, instead of, having to do all these different things, and just making it easy. That's it. So awesome, guys. Well, thank you so much for coming today. Thank you so much for providing these insights. I learned a ton. I'm excited to listen to the recording once more and take a few gems and maybe learn about what you guys are doing. And just like Joel said, I definitely urge everybody to check out all the projects here: Horizon, Multi-Chains, OSIS, Cadence. Awesome projects. Of course, Aether Games was not able to make it today. We're excited to have them as well. But until next time, everybody, super stoked to do this again with you guys. And if you guys have any closing comments before we end the space, we'd love to hear from you one more time.
Yeah, appreciate you having us on Web3M. Great talking to everyone here. Wish everyone good luck. Enjoy your rest of your day, and just hope you guys all succeed. We're all gonna make it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say for us here, we have exciting updates coming up. We're on the second phase of our test net. We have lots more updates coming up. I would say follow us on our social media. Join us on Telegram, engage in the conversation. These are activities you already do on a regular basis. So you can as well just get rewarded for doing these things, yeah, multi-chains. So that's it. Follow us, engage with us, and yeah, exciting updates coming soon.
Quick shout out to our team who posted our testnet trading competition that's live right now. So if you've ever wanted to trade futures and you have no idea what you're doing and you want to play with play money, this is the best time to try it. And there's also a prize if you win. So if you do really well with perpetuals trading at 50x, you can get a prize for that.
Sweet. I'm going to add one more note since everyone's doing a little plug. I'm going to keep mine simple. I'm not selling y'all anything. If you want to learn more about Web3, we are hosting all kinds of lives. I really would love to get everybody here on a Twitter space on our channel as well. Y'all are great. We've got tons of content on YouTube. All of it is free. So if anybody wants me or part of our team to explain all this complicated stuff like you're 5 years old, join us on our website or any of our socials. Thanks, everyone.
Killer. You guys are awesome. Love the projects you guys have. And go have fun. You know, it's Friday. Go kick some ass, everybody. And until next time, we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
That was a great experience.